Welcome to your Daily 5 for Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. I have seen now a few rumor reports, and they are only rumors. There's been no confirmation from Sony. We don't really have anything other than the fact that this rumor and these discussions or whatever planning they're doing by Sony is being reported by now numerous sites and many that don't usually report rumors that have absolutely nothing behind them. But there are these reports that Sony is at least looking into with some serious interest, developing a portable game station, which the closest analogy, I guess, would be something like the PlayStation Portable. Not to be confused with their current, quote, handheld device, the PlayStation Portable, which is one of the ugliest things I've ever seen in my life. If you've never seen one of these things, just imagine that somebody cut one of the PS5 controllers in half and then bolted each end onto the sides of a widescreen LCD monitor. Or it might be LED, I don't know, but whatever, a widescreen monitor that up until very recently would only be able to stream games from your PS5, but they are now testing out allowing people who are in, I think, the top tier of the, what do they call it? The Sony PS Plus Premium, whatever. They are able to now do cloud streaming, which apparently is doing fairly well. When the Portal originally came out, there were a lot of people who didn't really understand what the point of it was. Now that there is cloud streaming that will at least be possible for some people, it makes a little bit more sense. But at the time, I remember a number of people saying, why would Sony do this? As opposed to just making a new version of the PSP, because honestly, the PSP is still fondly remembered and still sells for quite a premium, because not only was it a very competent device on its own, but it has become very, very popular for people who want to modify it for playing older games, like retro games on there, because there's a lot of power in that hardware for its size, and it's a nice layout. If you've ever held one, it has a nice weight, it has a nice kind of feel where the buttons are, and there does seem to be a possible middle market, because at first this really didn't make sense to me. I thought, why would they want to do it now? They could have done this at any time. There were certainly people who were sad when the PSP went away, so why not do something like this sooner than now? But what I'm wondering is if they're looking around, and there's a couple of things that have kind of come up in the last few years in particular. One is, well, actually, the one that is kind of the most obvious is that the Switch is still printing money, even though it is so old at this point and is clearly an underpowered device, and yet it has lost none of its popularity. Part of that, of course, is because Nintendo, they occupy their own special space. There is definitely an element of that, but it also helps that the Switch is just a really nice form factor that most people really like. They just enjoy using it. And then on the other end, the Steam Deck has been, I think, more popular than most people expected. There was actually a small surge in other people trying to make competitive devices, none that I think have gone anywhere close to the Steam Deck. But for me, when I got it, I found that it was too big and too heavy. So I wonder if Sony is looking at both ends of the market and wondering if they can't hit a middle space. And the final thing that might have pushed them into serious consideration of this is the fact that Microsoft appears to be receding from the hardware market. They have all but confirmed that they're not going to be making at least a lot of consoles anymore. They are more focused on now just putting the Microsoft portfolio onto whatever device anybody wants to use to play their games. And maybe that combination of things has been just enough for Sony to think, well, we're not going to be able to compete on the low end in terms of the Switch, so we can't make something necessarily that cheap. And we're not going to be able to compete with the Steam Deck because it is too powerful a device, but that's on the higher end. Maybe there is a middle space where they could make something that I would think, I mean, they're talking about it being the PlayStation 5 Portable. I guess they could call it that. If they were smart, they would revive the PSP name and call it whatever they like, the PSP with a little 5 or something like that. But I would reutilize that PSP name if I was in marketing at Sony. But whatever they call it, when I first saw the rumor, which was only, I think, on one or two sites in the very beginning, I thought, no, this is probably just them doing like another version of the Portal or something like that, or maybe something in concert with somebody else. But the more I thought about it, and because, again, there's been a lot of movement with Microsoft specifically that makes people think they're not going to be making a lot of hardware anymore, if any at all, it does now make more sense. Yes, there's going to be a Switch 2, and I'm sure that's going to sell. But again, Nintendo is almost 50% of their own market. They're just not completely in the same space. So I wonder if Sony has looked at what's out there now and thought, okay, Nintendo is their own thing. Outside of that, there's just the Steam Deck, and maybe we can make something that could compete in a different space. I don't know. It's all still rumors now. We don't have any verification, but it makes way more sense today than it did even a little while ago. So we'll see what happens later.